Good morning. My name is Fay Jennett, and as part of Diversity Practices in Programming, I am asking the following question. Will equality of access diversify our programming? Quite simply, yes. For the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about why I think that is the case, identifying for me what are the top 2 key obstacles that exist, and some potential strategies to effect positive change in our sector. Firstly though, why am I speaking about this? As a privileged woman and person of colour, I feel a responsibility to effect positive change in a sector that I love. Why? It is my hope that in time there won't be a need for diversity agendas and that equal access of opportunity to the arts will be embedded in an accessible industry without the need for quotas or to tick boxes to get there. My previous roles have included Strategic Diversity Lead for Snape Maltings, which has involved writing and implementing an equality action plan for the organisation, remaining engaged with the national agenda on diversity and challenging inequalities within my organisation. I started working on equality, diversity and inclusion a couple of years ago, triggered by a BAME conversation day held in Birmingham on the representation of those artists across the sector in opera, hosted by the Royal Opera House and Opera North. Following this, I came back from this session with so many questions and wanting to challenge everything that we were doing. As such, we rewrote the Equality and Diversity Action Plan for 2018 to 22, primarily to hold ourselves to account, better respond to the Arts Council's Creative Case call to action, and to challenge the organisation not only to be better, but to be better at reporting and embed diversity across the whole. As the Snape Liaison for the European Network of Opera Academies, I had the opportunity of being introduced to the network, or the great work, that Tonic Theatre is doing, and received unconscious bias training as part of a board meeting alongside other partners in July 2018. As a result of this shared learning, the ethos I take forward in all of this work is equality of access leads to diversity, which encourages inclusion. Without an honest assessment and challenge of our processes, especially in creative decision making, we cannot hope to effect positive change. It is our collective responsibility to equalise access to the wealth of opportunity in our sector, to break away from what we know and take creative risks while exploring other routes in for artists, audiences, participants and partners. This leads me on to my first obstacle and subsequent solution. Number 1, gatekeepers and data monitoring. Diversity in programming and ultimately seeing our true society reflected on our stages is in the hands of the gatekeeper, the creative decision maker or programmer of any organisation, large or small. In the arts, unfortunately, we are a close-knit, time-poor industry with often quick decisions to make that likely won't involve an open call recruitment process the week before the concert your artist has just dropped out of. As such, we have a tendency to go with what and who we know, which, if consistently chosen from the same pool, will inevitably yield the same unconsciously biased result, with the same individuals being offered the same opportunities. Ask yourselves these questions when you're thinking about programming. Was there a recruitment process and was it open? Who had the chance to apply for this opportunity? Was there a fee? Are you asking the same people for recommendations? Look at how many opportunities one person has had to maybe another equally qualified but less tried and tested colleague. What stories are you choosing to celebrate? Who is being heard? What are you doing for your current audience? And what could you do for your potential audiences, and have you asked them? Be honest. We cannot change without a thorough assessment of where we are at currently, and this needs numbers. Without a baseline of information, we cannot assess where we have come from or easily project where we want to get to. This process can and will bring up tricky questions of ethics around data monitoring forms, which questions it is okay to ask or most PC, and ultimately you can't force people to fill out these forms. And you need to bear in mind, though, that this is not the only data available to you. Both quantitative and qualitative results are needed to create the full picture. So at the moment, both the Royal Opera House and the National Theatre have put their hands up and are using assumed data in a process to assess programming decisions, taking their creative teams as a case study and using role, gender and race as their markers. By collating these figures accordingly and making these assumptions, this has been meant that they can stack up upcoming programming decisions against the data that they have. And you just simply cannot ignore the numbers. Taking the results of an exercise such as this to your next planning session will give you a clearer picture of the diversity of your choices as an organisation. Further to that, asking staff how they feel and engage with a diversity agenda can also be monitored. Data monitoring is time-consuming, sometimes boring, and often mind-numbing, but it is ultimately necessary to make long-lasting change, and we are in this for the long game. Diversity costs time and effort, and if we don't invest in it now, we could become irrelevant, and I, for one, do not want to see that happen. Number 2, the talent pipeline. Invest in the long game. When looking at diversity practices in programming, and particularly during our search for a more diverse range of artists, there is sometimes an assumption that there simply isn't the talent in those from a diverse range of backgrounds. I think that this is simply not true. The artists are there, you just have to put more time and energy into finding them. Chichi Nwanoku and Chineke being a prime example of this. Broadening your recruitment processes will equalise access to your artist development programmes and in turn widen your talent pool. Again, similar questions still stand, and I challenge you to review your processes for access to these programmes. What barriers to access are your potential artists facing, financial and otherwise? Was there a recruitment process, and was it open? Who had the chance to apply for this opportunity? Was there a fee? Is the language you use accessible and gender neutral? Do you need to access special equipment in order to complete an application? And do you need to have an existing relationship with an institution to be considered? After attending the National Opera Studio Diverse Voices session, the issue of investing in the talent pipeline was discussed at length. The results in the end were simple. Nurture individuals who want to be inspired now, invest in the long game, and don't make excuses, just do it. Some potential solutions. Thinking twice and challenging the why of your creative choices is important. Take a moment to reflect on what power you do have and who you are in a position to influence. It might be important. Listening to Mark Jaffrey speak on this subject, he describes diversity in the arts as a wicked problem, much like climate change. And Wikipedia defines a wicked problem as being so socially complex that it has no determinable stopping point. The antidote to this? Start fires everywhere and look for the low-hanging fruit or easy wins. Could you challenge HR on whether or not they reimburse travel for attending interviews and demand an equality statement on the website for recruitment? Use the fact that all public funded organisations have to report on diversity to your advantage. What schemes do you have in place to ensure financial barriers are removed for artists? Take time to analyse the results of your data. Ask a co-worker to consider their creative decisions. If the arts have the power to make us feel less alone and give us hope, then we have a responsibility to benefit our industry with the rich diversity and resulting creativity our society has to offer. Taking the example of the recruitment statement on the website, it could be as simple as, we accept applications from all underrepresented individuals. This is the statement of intent that says our door is open to you. Or adding an item on the person spec of all job descriptions that mentions diversity in the role. That says this work is vital to our organisation. Use the 5-year planning cycles to our advantage. We need to see and hear more diversity, so challenge those gatekeepers to commit to quotas while we still need them. Key Change and the PRS Foundation are an example of this, and as are Sound and Music's fair access principles. Assess who you are trying to reach if you're looking at diversifying your audiences, and ask them what they want to see and hear, who they want to see and hear, and let that not be a one-off programming decision. Know that you cannot change everything at once, so prioritise and bring people with you. An equality action plan is only as good as the people who buy into it and the paper it is written on, and there are loads of ways to ask people for feedback. Diversity practices in programming have long been an agenda item for many industry conversations, and as I said at the beginning, I do hope we reach a point where they are no longer necessary. However, until then, a cultural shift across our industry will involve each and every one of us. This is definitely not something we can do alone. We all need to reflect on how we work, how we think, and what influences the choices that we make. In the end, that's what will drive the greatest change. So, will equality of access diversify our programming? I believe so, yes. Thank you for your time, and thank you to Juliet and Eavesdropping for giving me the opportunity to share some thoughts with you.